It having reached past the hour of 5:30 p.m., I'm going to be calling the February 19th, 2025 Community Police Review Board meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Member Beasley Day.
Present.
Member Bryant.
Present.
Member Byrd.
Present.
Member Christensen.
Present.
Member Demrell.
Here.
Member Grant.
Here.
Member Smith. Member Hahn.
Here.
Chairman Solorio.
Here.
Chairman Solorio, Board Member Smith is absent this evening. We would like to ask the board to consider her request for an excused absence, which meets your criteria for the granting of an excused absence. At this time, we ask for a motion from the board to grant her an excused absence.
Motion. Second.
We have a first and a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty, so on to agenda item 1, declaration of conflict of interest. Do any of the board members have any conflict of interest pertaining to items listed on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comments. So if there's anyone out in the audience that would like to make a public comment, please come up one at a time, and you will have 3 minutes to speak publicly. Alrighty, seeing no public comments at this time, I will go ahead and move forward to consent item. Would anyone like to remove any consent item for further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to new business.
Motion
Okay.
to approve.
Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. We're going to need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay, on to new business. Today we'll be having a presentation, and a presentation by Judge Ruben A. Villalobos.
That's on wheels, you know.
I can, oh, I can. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Ruben Villalobos. I'm a judge of the Superior Court here in Stanislaus. I have been for 10 years, and I grew up in this room. As I'm looking around here, I remember coming in here when I was a little kid. My whole life went to Franklin down the street, Mark Twain, Modesto High School. So you could say, what, a third to a sixth of a mile in each direction away from here. Went on to UC Berkeley for my undergraduate, the Martin Luther King Jr. School of Law for law school. And then I was in private practice for the better part of 16 years, public defender for the first part of that. And then in 2015, approximately 10 years ago, I was appointed to the bench. I've been a judge of the Superior Court for 10 years, most of that in juvenile, including a stint as the presiding judge of the juvenile court. I want to get a little bit of my ethics out of the way, some disclosures, if I may, because it's very important that I do this to make sure that I stay within the rails of our branch of government. So first of all, as a judge, I have a duty to not involve myself in the government workings of other government organizations. When I was a board member, I would come to meetings, I would go to meetings, I would sit behind the dais here as a speaker or as a member. As a judge, we're not allowed to do that. However, under Standards of Judicial Administration 5.40, the juvenile court judge is in a unique position and has a position of outreach, duty to reach out to the community, to answer questions, to try to find common solutions. And so I just wanted to say that I'm here in my capacity as a juvenile court judge, having been invited. And so that takes care of my ethical obligations, so I don't get written up. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm not law enforcement. I'm not the police. I am not a partisan. You could say I'm neither an eagle or a chief. I'm a ref. And so I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. I understand that kind of the call of the question for me is if I had any comments as to ways to reduce youth arrest in general and specifically amongst the Latino community. I can tell you, obviously, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I will tell you that as the judge of the Superior Court, I have been to 3 funerals of what I call my babies, my children, who appear in front of me. I have been to more graduations than I have to funerals, but the number should be 100-fold. It should be 1,000-fold, and that certainly is not the case. I will tell you that as a juvenile court judge, what I balance every day is, as I tell my children and youth and families who appear in front of me, I believe that every single night that they spend in our juvenile hall is a failing. It's a failing for them, it's a failing for their families, it's a failing for the courts. I think the chief probation officer agrees with me in that assessment, who's in charge of our hall. I would guess the police chief might agree with me in that assessment. And yet, of course, we have a duty to keep our city safe. And I can tell you the most heartbreaking thing in the world is when someone spends a night in our juvenile hall, partially because of their conduct, but also because I don't have a safe place to release them to. And so I want to tell you that I have a duty under the law to intervene to the least amount necessary to fix the problem or ameliorate the problem. Okay, so, you know, I want the members of the board, I want the members in the room to think about things that hopefully existed in their homes as they were growing up. I'm going to start with your refrigerator door. Okay, I want you to think about your refrigerator door when you were growing up. Were there pictures on that refrigerator door? Were there track certificates and awards? Were there outstanding citizen, student of the month? Did that happen in your household? Did you do that for your children? So many of my kids don't have that. So many of my kids don't have the reaffirmation, the support, the structure to say, hey kid, you just did a beautiful job and I'm so proud of you. I am so proud of you. And when I say that, I want to make sure it's understood. I'm not criticizing the parents that are in my courts either, because we have generational cycles, as I'm sure you're well aware. We have kiddos. When I say kiddos, I mean anyone 18 or younger in the home that do not have parents in the home, that are being raised by grandparents, that are being raised by what we call non-related extended family members, things of that nature. And so I can tell you what I do is try to bring the refrigerator door concept to the youth and families that appear before me. We have something in my courtroom called Judge V's Wall of Success. Okay, and so we had to figure out how we're going to do that because juvenile proceedings are confidential. So the first step was how do we create that feeling of the refrigerator door in a way that preserves confidentiality and whatnot. Fortunately for me, my sister is a long-term elementary school teacher, and I come from a family of teachers. My brother and I are the ones that strayed into the law and became lawyers. And so I called my sister over and she helped me put up a bulletin board. And so on our bulletin board, we renew it every year on January 1st, and we have different little places where we honor high school graduations, extracurricular activities, jobs, getting into college, career technical education. And we have a separate board that's just called Awesome. And the reason why is because sometimes someone else's success metrics, like graduating from high school or going to college or, magna cum laude and all that other stuff, it isn't the same as what the kids and families that appear before me are experiencing. So when a kid makes it a month without smoking dope, that's awesome. And they get a sticker on the board. And you would be surprised, or maybe not, but I will tell you that it doesn't matter the level of the crime, doesn't matter if it's a simple crime, a more serious one, including up to the ultimate offense of murder. When I have the youth and families that appear in front of me and they're doing well and they're succeeding, I get a little sticker. And I say, you know what, little Johnny, we're putting a sticker up on the board because I want other youth to know that success like yours is possible. Little Johnny's charged with killing someone. And I'll tell you, without exception, I see a smile on their face, I see a sense of accomplishment, and I've even on occasion had people say, hey, that's my sticker up there, Judge V. So I can tell you, within the court circumstance, I have a duty, first of all, to intervene as little as possible to affect the rehabilitative needs. The other thing is we try to reward everything. We have what I call a compliment sandwich in court. And when I say that, I don't want to give the impression that it's one of these things which I think has been criticized on occasion that everyone gets participation medals. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, honoring everyone for what they are able to do in the way that they do it. And so when I have a kid before me that's struggling extremely, I find a way to give them a compliment sandwich, okay? So we start the court proceeding with what they're doing well. And then we end with what they're doing well. And then we have some hard conversations in the middle. And I'll tell you, on occasion, I gotta look real hard to find that bread for the sandwich. But if you look hard enough, you can find it. So I would say that those would be the methods that we use within the court to try to reduce arrests. I will tell you, and recidivism, I guess, is to stay within my lane. Recidivism would be, I think, the way that I look at it. I'll tell you, my wish list would involve more robust programming, nonprofit organization support in the community. And when I say that, when I talk about my wish list, I am not being critical of the judges before me, nor am I being critical of the probation office or the various programs we have within the community, because we have several, and they are both in the government world and in the nonprofit world, and I think our two worlds work together well. That being said, generally, it's an overstatement, but as a general rule, people are not detained in San Francisco until after they've been adjudicated, meaning after they've been found to be responsible for committing a certain crime. So you think about that for a second. How does that work? Well, they have robust services that provide all kinds of wraparound services to youth and families who are before them. Now, I'm not saying that we can do that, and I'm also not saying, I think San Francisco is not a really far out example. And the reason why I say that, sure, it's a lot larger than we are, but they have one juvenile court in the city and county of San Francisco. We have one juvenile court in the county of Stanislaus. So it's not too far a comparison to connect the two. The difference, of course, is that they have a lot of community-based money involved in supportive nonprofit services. So again, limited in my role as to what I can do. I can tell you within my ethical obligations under the standards of judicial administration, part of that is to bring people together. And so a duty of convening, you could say. And so I certainly, in a way that would be appropriate and acceptable, would love to be a part of any meetings with folks who might be interested in either bringing a new community-based service to Stanislaus County, or even better, for existing programs to find different and new best practices in the way to serve our youth and families. So I think that's it. I wonder if there are questions. Well, let me say one more thing. This is a tough one. Told you I've been to the funerals. I will tell you that, generally speaking, if I were to oversimplify The problem with what keeps me up at night with my kids, for the young men and boys, it would be two things in this order. Guns first, and finding a family outside of the home second, whatever you want to call it. Okay? But guns, certainly, first and foremost. For my young ladies, what keeps me up at night is folks outside the home that are giving our young ladies a life that they're not ready for, a life that's not appropriate for them, a life that deprives them of their youth and their childhood and proms and, you know, going to Claire's and getting hair bangles and whatever else the cool kids are doing nowadays. That's what keeps me up at night. And again, it's an oversimplification. Not all of my boys have gun problems, and not all of my young ladies are facing the risk of being trafficked. But I would say that far and away, it's an overwhelming theme. And I mention that to say, if the goal is to keep people safe in the home so that we don't have to keep them safe in the hall, those would be the areas I think of need facing our youth the most. What questions do any of you have for me?
Is there anyone on the board that has any questions for Ruby? Go ahead.
Before the question, like I said, I know about half y'all, if not more. It's so wonderful to see you all here. This young man was when he was a kid, he would be in my office doing his homework. His mother worked in my office, so it's great to see you up there, Nico. And that, no, not from that. And that's why he called me Ruben, which is fine with me. Go ahead, Mr. Hahn.
As it relates to, you mentioned that we're talking about how to help with, especially with Hispanic youth, help that situation. Do you see any trends that are related to race or any other things that are that kind of stand out to you?
Sure, I'll tell you this. We're looking for an equal opportunity, I don't want to say employer, but a place where anyone can become a member. It would be within the gangs. And I will tell you that it used to be that that when I was a baby lawyer with some of these police officers who are here, quote unquote Latino gangs used to be that. I will tell you that the youth before me who are suspected of being involved with gangs, specifically Latino gangs, what we know as the Latino gangs, are of different races and ethnicities. And when I say that, I mean of all races and ethnicities. So that, as far as a trend, I would say that's law enforcement could speak a lot better than on the point than I could. But I'll tell you that when I was a kid, there was the X gang and the Y gang, and they seem to be divided among race. That seems to be less of an issue as far as the youth that appear in front of me, which is all I'm speaking to.
So the gangs are more the common denominator than anything else?
Well, what I said was the guns first, the gangs, and I think what I said specifically were the forces outside of the home that are trying to give them a new life. But yes, it is gangs. The reason I say that is because my kids have access to guns, I think, before they become entrenched, if you will, in a gang lifestyle. The gangs are the the guns are the real scary one for me.
Judge, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Of the youth you see before you, what would you say is the ethnic makeup of the total population that you're engaged with?
Okay, let me, I don't want to answer that question in a roundabout way, but let me answer that question in a roundabout way. I will tell you that the better part of a decade ago when I started, the outgoing probation officer, this would have been 3 probation officers back, pulled me aside, and I believe she had a little bit of freedom because she was on her way out. And she told me that she and the court had started a program that was dedicated to reducing ethnic disparity in incarceration, juvenile court involvement. Some people in the room may remember the meetings. They were held in this very room. There were meetings that were held to look into that. She told me the reason why she started that, one day she was out walking the hall, and juvenile hall. She was out on the field, and pretty much most of the kids were out playing. And that day they were playing soccer. And she told me, she said, I looked out and I saw brown, 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 black, brown, 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 black, black, and just a few white kids, okay? And she said, that's when I noticed that we needed to do something about that. I will tell you that before I ever got there, probation really, based on the work they came up with through that committee, started moving on to a computer-based metrics that would kind of assign points to people and making a recommendation, do they get detained or not get detained, in a way that would take race out of the equation. And I think we saw some progress with that. There certainly was more growth that needs to happen. I will tell you that my kids are Latino, they're African American, they're Asian, they're Caucasian. I'm not prepared to tell you what the breakdown is compared to the county population. I would say that historically, and I know this because I teach judges statewide, African American youth, this was a 2017 study, so it's going on about 10 years old. And it's pre-pandemic, and the pandemic changed everything, okay? African American youth were detained 9-1 to Caucasians in the juvenile justice system in California. Latino youth 4-1 to Caucasians. Asian youth at slightly less than 1-1 to Caucasian Americans. And then the reason I remember the stat is because they say mixed, which I guess is me, was also less than 1-1. I don't know what that stat means. But I would hope that we're better than that. But I will also tell you that moving forward from 2017, by 2020, the state passed a law that was designed at looking at just that, racial disparity when it comes to sentencing, charging decisions, things of that nature. And it's something that all judges are now required to look at in one form or another. I can't give you better statistics than that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Judge, for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Bird.
I am a big proponent on prevention and intervention programs.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know that youth in Modesto constantly complain that there's not enough here for them to do.
Jim, let me interrupt you. I was the one complaining about that when I was a youth here in Modesto. We got a lot more to do now. I just wanted to say that, but go ahead.
Okay. So I really think that more of the city's money needs to be spent and invested on activities for youth. Do you think something like a roller skate rink would work here in Modesto?
I'm going to think on that question for a second before I answer. Just give me a second to think on that. I have an answer to it. I'm trying to figure out whether that's within or without my lane to answer that question. So I will say this. I teach new judges statewide. And as part of that, we have youth both from this county and San Diego County who are formally involved in the juvenile justice system that are now functional members of society. They're working, they're getting their masters, they've got great jobs, they're giving back to their communities, all right? So they speak to these new judges about what things were like when they were a kid that led to their circumstances. And when they talk about what got them from the safety of a home, if they had safety within the home, to somewhere else, be that a gang or be it being trafficked or whatever, the common thread was that they didn't have safety. They didn't have positivity. One of the youth who addresses the judges, the comment that's questionably asked is, how do you get out of the gang? How do you do this? How do you do that? His answer was, I went to junior college because folks aren't claiming in the library, right? And so I think it would be inappropriate for me to recommend this or recommend that, but I would say the more healthy, positive options that our young people have, where they can go and be safe, the less likely they're gonna try to find that somewhere in an unhealthy way. Great question.
Judge, follow up on that. I too thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
It's wonderful to hear these things. At the community meeting here last night, Chief Gillespie mentioned in his comments that he would love to have enough officers on the street to be able for an officer to get out of his car, go play a pickup basketball game with kids in the community. And presently he finds it very challenging, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chief, but his staffing levels are such right now that that's a challenge to be able to do that. It's our responsibility on this board to make recommendations. And my thought would be if we can recommend some alternative, I mean, obviously ideal would be to increase the staffing levels to what Chief Gillespie thinks is appropriate. In absence of that, you know, from the budgetary constraints that exist, if we could develop a cadre of folks that would complement the officers that could accomplish that, do you think that would be a positive step as far as engaging with the youth and maybe reducing some of the stigma of law enforcement with that?
Gotcha. I'm going to pass or punt as it relates to should the county spend money on this, that, or the other thing. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to answer that. I will use two brief examples that I think might speak to something that you're saying. Aside from being the juvenile court judge, until about 6 months or a year ago, I was the care court judge, which is a program. Stanislaus County was a pilot statewide, although now it's a program statewide. Originally, there were just 8 of us counties. And the reason I use that as an example is in becoming a care court judge, I became acutely aware that law enforcement, not just the chief, but several of the other departments, have really been doing an awesome job trying to find new ways to reach out to the community. Uniforms. Who's going out there? What are you wearing? What do you look like? Who's the first person on scene when someone is not handling, when someone's struggling, right? How do you do that in a way that's safe, but also doesn't escalate? So I'm not here to speak to funding as to what would work, what wouldn't work. I can tell you that as the care court judge, I saw these community-minded folk that were out there in the front line, and I was very thankful as a judge. The second example I want to give is, I go to these trainings up and down the state and find best practices and whatnot. LA County, biggest county in the state, biggest county in the country, more judges in LA than in most states. One of the best practices that they use there is to come up with a concept called chasers, okay? So the chasers are folks that are getting, someone's struggling, little Johnny's not going to school, little Susie's not going to her counseling or whatnot. These chasers are going out there and figuring out what's going on with little Johnny, figuring out what's going on with little Susie. And if the obstacle is transportation, helping to figure out transportation. If the obstacle is not transportation, but transportation is used as the excuse, okay, well, we've ruled that out, let's talk about what we do to get you to the program. And I know that those community-minded folks, that some of whom are a part of government, like probation offices and whatnot, some of whom are part of nonprofit organizations, do a tremendous job. We have an organization here in Stanislaus County that follows a similar approach, and that would be Legacy. I know that they have, part of their program is to follow kids around and to see what's going on. How come you're not at your program? How come you're not doing this? What can I do to help you get you there? And so I think that's very helpful.
Thank you.
I got my own kid at home. He's a real good kid. I got to tell him at least twice to put his towel away, right? So the more that you can remind these kids and be there and help them, the better outcomes we get.
Thanks.
Thank you, Judge, for being here, and thank you for your intel. I have a question for you. You were talking about new CBOs to sit down with you. First of all, how do we reach you?
Sure.
Do you have cards or something you want to leave? with us?
Sure. I wish I had cards. I was just thinking today, I gotta get some more cards. But I will leave my email. Ms. Bird has my email,
All
and
right,
she's
it's okay,
welcome.
already give it to me?
Yeah, and the cell phone, and my cell phone, and she's welcome to give both my email and the cell phone to the members of the committee who want to reach out to me.
Awesome. And have you heard of a program called Advanced Peace?
Advanced who?
Advanced Peace.
I have not.
All right, it's a program that has been implemented in Richmond, California, also Stockton and Fresno, to help people, our gang members or youth that are out on the streets with the guns, put their guns down and give them an alternative program to even become entrepreneurs and things of that nature. So I'd love to sit down and talk to
All right.
you about that program and see what we can.
Excited.
Yes.
I look forward to that.
All right, wonderful.
I think I saw a hand in the back.
Oh yeah, it was me. It was just that like same thing. Like when I was in Nashville, Tennessee, when I lived out there and went to school, we kind of did something similar to where a part of our fraternity, we had to kind of have like a big brother, or like take a little sister, like from the local high school, and we would have to get a troubled youth, and we would have to essentially follow them around and everything like that. And so I would like to see a Big Brother program here that's similar to that, because I think it would help out a lot, and also the utilization of sports a little bit more. I know our PAL has like created more so of like a soccer team. I even think our police department has even tried to get into boxing, which is one of my favorites, but I know how big that is for students and youth. But one of the biggest things I know that kind of saved me and my friends is that we played AAU basketball. And we would travel around, like we wouldn't just travel locally, we would travel all over California, and that opened up a lot of our eyes. Like when we had, I want to say 12 players, a lot of us, I want to say 9 out of 12 did not have a career pathway or like any type of real plan for their lives. After AAU, it just opened up more avenues for them, like as far as what they see and what they're around. And I would say like out of the 12, we pretty much all went to college, whether we played or not. And I just know like exposing kids to those things too, like from their environment that they're currently in, would also help them out too. So I would say that I'm actually happy that the police department is taking on some of these things. And so really good to hear the discussions. Thank you for coming out, and very pleased to hear everything that's going on.
I have a response to that. First of all, I got to tell you that as a father who has taken my kiddo to many a meeting like this, I want to tell you, I'm assuming this is your kiddo back there. What a well-behaved child that is, first of all. And so, aren't you precious? I just wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say in response to what you indicated was, a few months ago, my son and I and my mom, we travel the country. We fly somewhere, drive around, check out 4 or 5 states. My son has seen 40 states. We were in Buffalo a couple of months ago. And so we went there to see Shirley Chisholm's grave, of all things. Okay, it's pretty awesome. And then as I was leaving, I thought, what else is Buffalo known for? And I thought of the Tops supermarket murder, where more than 10 people were murdered, I think about 3 years ago. And so I said, do I go by there? Do I show it to my son? And I did. We went, and there was a beautiful memorial, and we talked about community, and we talked about policing, and we talked about food deserts, and all this other kind of stuff, right? The reason I mention it, across from this market, which is the centerpiece of that neighborhood, there was a sign, and it's a big sign, like one of these cloth signs that's up with rivets on a fence. And it said, Fathers, F-A-T-H-E-R-S, with dots in between each of the letters. So I'm a curious chap. I want to figure out what that means, so I Googled it. Turns out, well before the shooting, some 20 years ago, there were other community shootings that were happening on or about schools in Buffalo. And so a group of fathers got together, and they said, you know what? We're going to divide up the week, and 5 of us are going to be there at the beginning of school every day, and 5 of us are going to be there at the end of school every day, just to walk kids into school, walk them out, seeing how they're doing, what's the beef, who's beefing on who, what's happening. And you know, I can't speak to the program. I can tell you that in reviewing the website, it appeared to be a tremendously successful program. It came about by just parents getting involved and using that power in numbers to come together. So yeah, all of that's very exciting. Yeah, fathers out of Buffalo, Google it, maybe you'll find out what they are.
Is there any other questions from the board? I do have one.
Yes, sir.
So, kind of going back to talking about guns and weapons and stuff like that with the youth, I was curious on, based off of your knowledge, how do you feel as a board we can assist either the police department or the city on, does the youth need more knowledge about guns, about weapons, on what they can do, what the effects are of using them?
Yeah.
Maybe on gun safety, even if they're youth, we can have officers possibly do maybe a classroom training where they go in and they kind of teach the kids about the gun and what's safe or not safe about it, kind of things like that. So I was just kind of curious on some of your thoughts on that.
Sure. I will answer that question and stay within my lane. I will tell you trends that I've seen over the better part of the last 10 years. First of all, I don't have any problem with gun safety. I think everyone could use more gun safety. I will tell you this, that in my 10 years as judge, 8 years in juvenile court, one shooting was what I would call a gun safety issue. Okay, was a kid not knowing how to safely handle, store, or use a gun, playing with a parent's gun, and something bad happening. Now, I'm not saying we haven't had more. We have. There's one that comes to mind. Every week, I have cases where kids have guns when they shouldn't. And kids get hurt with guns, or kids hurt someone with guns, or kids ruin their lives with guns. Or, a parent gets a 2 a.m. phone call that their life has changed forever. Okay, so gun safety, awesome. I think more of us could use it, certainly. I don't think it's going to change the, I'm trying to not be flip when I say this. I've never seen a seized gun that had a gun lock on it, ever. I'm not as big as the chief has, but I've not seen it. Okay. I think now I'm going to go back to my school board days to answer your question, because I think the answer is the same here when it comes to courts and whatnot. I think the answer is not necessarily more education, just time. Just time is it. The more time we spend with these kiddos, the more time we have them engaged and involved, figuring out what their deal is. If it's boxing, if it's whatever it is, my high school, we went to Modesto High, just down the street here. One of my high school teachers saw that we were reading Holden Caulfield and we were interested in the fencing, right? Like not stolen property, but with the fake swords. And so he set up a fencing program at the school. And all of a sudden, we had a couple hours a week with that teacher. And, I was, the 4th place fencer on the team before. But I learned a lot working with that guy. And so I think time. The more time we can spend with the kiddos, the better results we'll see.
Thank you. Okay, one more time, is there any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I will be opening it up to public comment. So if there's anyone from the public that would like to comment on this agenda item, please come up one by one. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Or do we go up over there?
Yeah, if you could please just step to the dais.
Hello, good evening, board. Members of the public, community, thank you, Judge, for being here. I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's comments here tonight about really focusing on prevention versus intervention. I feel like a little bit more at ease with how we're approaching this. I really like that the main goal here is having time and activities for these children to have, and so that way they have things to do, they have a place to feel safe at. And while I understand the judges being extremely professional and giving us these examples, I kind of want to follow that route and say that I definitely agree that as a city we should be having more activities. I remember growing up here and coming here into this very room, I remember we had programs where girls would come and we would go do stuff around the community, go to local businesses, stuff that take us out of the house. Because again, parents here are busy. Things are going up in price. people are working more jobs. Parents are tired, or sometimes even children don't even have access to safe parents. So having this community to take care of these children would prevent them to have any interaction with the police. Because I understand, I know, that whole idea of police wanting to play hoops with children or stuff like that. But we don't necessarily need these figures who have authority to be engaging with these children. It's more of like the community, our neighbors, our family, our friends being there and having a safe place to hang out. That would allow them to have these better behaviors, better social skills. And so I really just want to say that I'm a big proponent of that, because I feel like kids doing more in this community will prevent like more youth arrests, because that's what's going on. A lot of kids go to jail because they're not getting the attention. If they get the attention from adults who actually are a role model and they don't necessarily have to be police, that would prevent more youth arrests. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment?
Hi, my name is John Deloach. I'm a member of the People Vaccine Council. I'd like to find out a couple of things about the youth in this community. A lot of them don't have good role models, because we've seen in our time as adults that some young kids, as we grew up, became parents. And their parents wasn't that diligent with them. So they've raised kids that they aren't diligent with. So how do we break that trend of kids not being totally held responsible for what they do? You know, we want to be kind and considerate to the youth, but a lot of them don't give us that back in return. They want to be disrespectful, and I'm saying things that are wrong, because a lot of times we want to treat every kid like they all have a good point in life. A lot of them don't, and I think that having the merchants in this community offer up jobs, because a lot of our youth aren't athletic and aren't book smart. They need to use their hands and their physical labor. During that time of getting a paycheck, they can also put together in their mind, this is what life is all about. They can quit trying to be bullies, quit trying to be other things that they're not, put the guns down, that sort of thing, and be aware of what they have to do to be good adults. They may not have had the greatest example at home, and that's what a lot of times we're missing, that they don't have that example at home. So by them getting some examples outside the home, they can somehow put together what a life should be. And that's not always involving violence and taking from others. It's trying to work hard and make a living to stay out of that type of situation. We need to find merchants that will help our youth, you know, by making them hard workers and finding out what they do know. Sure, we'll go through some pains of them being hired and fired, but then they'll get in their mind that, hey, that's a part of life. No one's gonna give me anything, I gotta make my own way. And so, hopefully, that can be taken into consideration with the board so that, we can stop looking at, okay, we don't have to, treat the situation with kid gloves. These kids are over 18, now they're considered to be adults. And they have to be aware that they have a responsibility. That's just a little piece of what I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming to the west side, to the Martin Luther King Center. You know, I wanted to say something to the chief. I dealt with about 4, maybe 5 chiefs of police. He is the first chief that makes all the events to me. When you're gonna miss one, even we didn't have to use the building, we was out there 105 degrees in the park. Guess what? Chief was right there. I've been a community activist in this town probably over close to 30 years. I'm a little warrior. Well, like Whitney say, she says I'm that adjective in your washing machine. I get it stirred up. But the bottom line is about equal rights. And I love this. And I think that the police, or maybe you can go to another neighborhood and put on this. And back to the chief, I don't know if I told him this, but I know I told every 4 chief I run into, 4 African-American police officers. Back in the day, I used to go to all the graduation. See, y'all don't know that, but I've been there. I got pictures to show you, every one of them. But when the chief says, I got my officers stand in certain areas. And the reason I say that, because I don't know if I told him that, is when I was coming up as a boy in Texas, the police officer grew with the neighborhood. He knew your grandmother, he knew your mom, your aunt, everybody. And in that, if it was a problem to be solved, not being a snitch or whatever they were doing, they would get more because they trust him. Like, give an example. If little Billy is a little retarded or whatever, a little misunderstanding, that police that's coming on, he doesn't know that. He line to kill him. But if the police officer grow with the neighborhood, he know little Billy maybe act up or whatever, just put him in the police car and take him home, because he knows his parents. And like I said, last night when he said that, I said, dang, I was thinking, I don't know if I told him about that. If I did, I missed it, but most all, the chief that was here, I always tell him, let your officer grow with the neighborhood, because he's gonna know the kids, you know, he's gonna know their family. And I appreciate that, chief, but you said 6 months, but to be honest with you, I was just keeping her in Devon, you know? Let them grow with that neighborhood, because it's important. Most of the, probably the killing that we have by officers is that they don't know the person. They don't know that he has a problem. Sometimes you can't get through 911 and say, hey, that's Mike. He didn't take his medicine. Maybe that officer didn't hear that call. You know, You know, I sit on about 7 boards in this town. I was looking at one of mine. I sit on the senior citizen and veterans. I have a lot of people that my mom and brother. Well over 8 years, I guess. Mr. Jones do a lot in this neighborhood just to make it better. We're doing good here. I come sometime, I've been late, but I appreciate this. Look at us mixed up. That's what we want. You know, from all nationality, different things, different culture. That's what we need. It's beautiful. And you know, you got Michael Bourne, I guess he trained police officer how to, you know, approach. Because I got pulled over by police and the light was out. And I kind of got a little attitude. And you know what the police officer told me? He says, "What attitude?" And I looked at him. I said, "I apologize. I didn't know the tail light was out. This is a white car. And I didn't know that it was out. But look at the training, the way I went through the training. He reversed it on me. What attitude?" And then I thought about it. Hey, you know what? I had to apologize to him. You know what? I'm sorry, man. I'm looking at something where I didn't find out the tail light was out. But let me say this to the audience. We need to get involved. You know, like we're having this event over here and looking at all these people here. That's good. But look, they're right downtown. Is that the third Wednesday you have a meeting?
Yes, sir. Sebastian? I don't mean to cut you short. 5 minutes is up. So
My 5 minutes up?
Yeah, if you don't mind just wrapping it up for us.
Can I get just 10 minutes? Let me just borrow that. Listen, I'm getting older. I'm 63 now. I'm getting older. Listen, get involved in your neighborhood, in your city. We always point a finger, but we really don't know what happened. But I say this here, you know, I always say boots on the ground. Sebastian, that's been my motto. Boots on the ground. But y'all guys are here next month in God's will. Go down. And because I know you get tired of looking out and ain't nobody out there. Go down and let's find out. Maybe you can play a part. So keep up the good work. You guys doing an excellent job. And Chief, I'm not kidding. I've been through 4 months of it. You're topping my best. And I'm being honest. Because you're there. You know, last night the sheriff, he didn't even come. I don't know what his problem was. But anyway, I don't know. But I'm just talking. But guess who was here? This chief of police. And I admire that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Okay, and just as a reminder, Sebastian did get 5 minutes, but for everyone else, it is a 3-minute public comment. So you'll hear a buzzer go off and then your time is up. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Juan Theus, West Side. I, as a former hood kid myself, I grew up in this neighborhood. A lot of my friends were part of the gangs. They were, you know, we were roaming the streets. Oftentimes, I mean, I would be the good conscience for the group, but it wasn't, you know, those situations didn't always end up in positive ways. And so, one of the things that I want to stress is that Ruben's right. We need time in these neighborhoods. You know, now as a community organizer and someone who works for a nonprofit in town, who are now piloting youth programs. You know, time in these neighborhoods are the most key things to solving a lot of issues with youth. One of our city's strengths is National Night Out. I think that we need to make these programs more robust, spread these out throughout the summertime, throughout the year, so that we could engage with youth, create community. Mr. Brad Hahn, you have Modesto Neighborhoods Inc., correct? Which are looking at creating these community events all throughout Modesto. And I think some of those solutions we already have. We just need to adapt them to different communities like Southside. This has a Salvation Army, but are in need of more resources, need of more events. We have, here, the Maddox Youth Center, it's under renovation right now. We need a place to bring kids. Maddox Youth Center saved me. It was because I was able to meet the Marvin Jacobos of Modesto, the Ruben Villalobos of Modesto, the Homero Mejias of Modesto, that I was able to find my way to fulfill a passion to help people. And I think we just need to be spending more time and really seeing how we can fulfill the lives of the youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Gina Vargas, and I would just like to say, I'm a little late coming in, but I would like to say, I would just like to say, I grew up on this side of town, and at the time, it's been, a few years, we had a lot to do. The parks saved me, because we had the swimming pools, we had the activities in the park, and, although it was pretty much in the summer, but still, we had things to do. We had the skating ring, we had different things to do. But that's so that you guys can't see. They've taken all that away for our youth. So what do you leave them? You leave them to negativity. It says the devil, idle mind is the devil's workshop. So if you leave nothing for them to do, they're going to just pick up off of each other, feed off of each other, and that's what's been happening. The other day I was down at a store on this side of town. 2 young men. It was in the middle of the day. I was like, you should be at school. Oh, one said, I got kicked out. I said, okay, well, can I get your name and your number so I can get you in, help somebody get you in there? They gave me the Instagram. They didn't give me the number and didn't give me their full names, but I reached out to the school to let them know, hey, these 2 young men, they should be in school, And so the president, John Irving, told me I need their names. I need their full names, to get them. But I'm looking at it as there's nothing for them to do. Even in the school, make it interesting. When I was in high school, I was busy at different times, but they made it where I can do things to graduate early. So I got busy. I got busy during school year, in the summer. They're idle. And we're not helping. Parents are busy, a lot of them. And there are a lot that's just not doing anything with their kids. It used to be a time when grandparents were there to, tell them stories about how they grew up and the things that they got into, so they learned. We don't have that anymore. We have us. And it's going to take us as a village to help our children. Our children are suffering. I live on the north side, over at Prescott High School. A friend of mine, me and my friend, we helped out at the store. They get out of the store, they were stealing alcohol. Police not doing nothing. So we went in. Me and our friend, we stood at that door. But after, we were talking with the kids, they got used to us. And it was like, okay, so we said, well, hey, let's do a girls group, a lot of the girls. And they was like, we're excited. We need to get involved. We need to get these kids busy. Get them out of these cell phones, off of this, online all the time. There's more than that. So I just want to say, even like the police. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you so much.
Come into the community even more. Not in your uniform. Sometimes you got to come in plain clothes.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I do definitely agree with what most are saying here, and I feel like it's important to kind of reiterate what the judge has mentioned is that having those robust programs, and also other dismissing kind of like preventive tactics, because I feel like for a while, and why we are talking this about the issue of reducing arrests is because I feel like the city and folks feel like we have a dependency on the police to kind of solve this issue. And the issue is that, and it's been known for a long time that the main causes for crime, and it's been known since the 60s in the Kerner Commission, it's poverty and social dysfunction. The police do not have the tools to fix those poverty issues, okay? It's just the policing. And so a lot of the folks here are right. It's about funding and investing in these communities. It is about showing the kids that we care by funding them, by providing all the supports that we can, providing a safe, productive environment, because what I want to ask the board here is that if we want to invest communities and if you have a stable home because we're able to fund and provide that for them, a safe environment, equitable opportunities, a supportive and healthy network, an opportunity for self-sufficiency, how likely are they to join gangs or engage in activity that leads to arrests? And I think that's what we need to focus on. And not only that though, but I feel like we need to reach out to those folks. It's not so much of, hey, let's solve this for them, because let's look at the audience here. How many of them are the youth that we're trying to support? Why aren't we reaching out to those youth? Why aren't we bringing them into the conversations? Because they should also have a say. We can't figure it out, but why can't we bring them in? And I feel like that's what we need to focus on. And so what I want to ask the board here too, is that how can we maybe find ways to pressure or push the city council or the city or the county for more funding for robust programs? I know we're in fear of losing a lot of funding due to the political climate, but I don't think that should keep us from trying to push that, you know? But as the Communications Review Board, I think that is a part of reviewing the police and stuff like that, is ways to do more preventive measures so the police, there's no dependency on them for this. They can focus on much more high-case stuff, okay? While we can support the community. And we don't need the police to play games with kids or anything like that, but I feel like that should be a responsibility of the social workers, outreach workers, community members, folks maybe formerly in those situations that can support and mentor the youth. So those are the questions that I have, and maybe y'all can continue that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello. The point that we've heard a lot of folks make about funding and programs, and well, first I want to say awesome work, and I know Austin especially, but I'm sure others, pushing the idea to have a meeting here. I think you look at the crowd compared to, I go to a lot of the regular meetings over at City Hall, and this crowd is much, much bigger. So good call on the idea and following through, and I know behind everything like this is city staff that did a bunch of work, so I want to thank everybody that helped make that happen. About funding, I think there's something, I'm gonna go like way back and bring something up that just needs to be said when we talk about inequality and funding. Historically, not just our area, but especially our area, because of agriculture and the industries we have, for a long time, 100 years or more, we lived in a pretty segregated society with first and second class citizens. And I think we all know who those first and second class citizens are. When you get a head start in owning land and having the know-how to start businesses, to work the land, you're gonna have a wealth inequality that's, gonna put people at a far disadvantage. So I just wanna, we're here, and I know specifically going back to Forward Together, we talked about why the Latino youth rate, was so high. So I'm kind of specifically talking about, the Latino population of this area. And that historical inequality, and I'm a big proponent of people have responsibility over themselves, but I think it's just something as a community that we need to talk about, or else we're not gonna get past these problems. So we have this whole history of a century of wealth inequality. We have folks that saw their farm worker parents, working 12, 16-hour days, coming home dirty, getting, half the night sleeping, getting up, crack of dawn, and getting back out and working. And when you see that generationally, when you have, maybe it's an uncle, a cousin, just somebody in the community, a family friend who might be involved in drugs or gangs, and you see the money that comes in when you're watching somebody else who works day in and day out with barely enough money to pay the rent, those shortcuts can be very, very tempting. And I've seen it in my family. I have very strict parents, so I don't know if I would have been called at risk, because I was afraid of what my dad would do to me. But I had cousins in rival gangs. We had, violence at family events, things like that I saw. So I know, how that cycle works. And I know that we talked about, a lot of people were talking about even the quote, robust programs. I was here in this very building, we were looking over there, and I was very surprised to hear, it was Supervisor Withrow say something about that government can't solve these problems with family and opportunities. And then the very next person, it was a city council person, was talking about Measure L and the money that came in and the specific problems they solved with that funding. And I was like, so I think there is an ideology that we can't just throw money at things and we can't just solve everything with a program. And maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But I know programs that helped me, summer school programs that I went through in high school that got me into college. When I was younger, there was Little League, you had to pay for it. And the kids knew which kids had parents that paid for them to be in Little League and which parents didn't have the money to put their kids in the Little League. When I was in that summer school program, a college prep program for low-income first-time college students, it lost its funding 2 years after I was in it. I actually worked as a mentor for the summer for the high school kids, and then the funding got cut. And I know kids in the town that I was living in that didn't get a chance to have that opportunity, that probably didn't go to college for that very reason, because they didn't know how to fill out paperwork, they didn't know how to apply, all these things that program taught me. And so, yes, it is gonna take money. We're gonna be spending it maybe on the police department on the back end. Let's put that investment into the front end. There's lots of programs in lots of cities like ours that we can learn from. Some of them were named Advanced Peace. I know I participated in the collaboration court in San Joaquin County, where it was a lot like we were hearing the judge talk about actually keeping people out of jail, because once you're in jail or juvenile hall, you just start getting a part of that culture. And it showed, we put someone in jail for 3 days or more, they just start getting used to that lifestyle. And so the point was to actually keep them out, but you had to place them in some kind of program. I know I went over my time, but thank you for letting me make that point.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public? Go ahead.
Thank you all. I'm really glad that we're having this CPRB meeting here at the King Kennedy Center in particular. I know it took a lot of work to get this going, so just huge thanks to all in attendance today. Echoing what a lot of members of the public have said already, I think social program funding is really at the heart of what this community needs. I want this to be a place where when people grow up, they can say they're proud to come from Modesto, and they can point to all the specific things that they love about this city. And I think that starts with funding things, especially for our youth. I have the privilege of being a public school teacher, so I get to interact with our youth a lot. One of the classes I teach is economics. So specifically, we talk about how our police department as well as our county sheriff's office mentioned that they are currently understaffed. And I don't want ineffective policing on the basis of lack of staffing, but I'd rather see the solution be done rather than increasing supply of policing and reducing the demand by funding those social programs. That way we can all operate at a level that is seen as appropriate by those involved, all that have the most intimate knowledge. I think by reducing the demand for policing, we can create a better Modesto for all folks involved. And in particular, I think here at the King Kennedy Center, it's important to keep in mind where some of those programs would be best served. Southwest Modesto needs a lot of love. I went to Modesto High, go Panthers, but I teach at Grigori High School. Very different populations, very different needs. I'd love to see more support here on West Modesto in particular. And I'd love to see creative solutions as to how we can get some youth voices in here. We have some youth in the room tonight, but maybe that's things like trying to reinvigorate. Maybe CPRB needs a youth rep. I'm talking under 18 youth rep on that board with y'all there, or as an audience voice Maybe that means hosting at a local middle school or high school. I know it was a big ask to get this going, but I hope that we can continue pursuing creative solutions because we sure need it. There's a lot of love in Modesto. Oh, it's going to be a lot of work to solve these problems, but I know we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, is there anyone else in the public that would like to come up and make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the board that would like to make any further comments? Okay, seeing none, we're going to be moving on to item B, a presentation from staff, immigration and policing by Chief Brandon Gillespie.
Well, good evening, board and members of the public. Brandon Gillespie, your police chief. And before I start, I think I won't take 3 minutes, but I want to give my gratitude to Judge Villalobos. I think everybody can tell by his presentation tonight the passion he has for our city. Being somebody who grew up here locally and knows our community, we are just more than fortunate to have him as a judge in our community. And so, thank you, Judge. The other thing I just wanted to mention is kind of, I felt like this is almost a continuation of last night's conversation that really I get excited about, because when we talk about what kept coming to my mind as I was sitting here listening to everybody is there's a lot of eagerness for solutions. And some of the programs were mentioned tonight, and I just started kind of jotting some down, but I think one of the things that we need to consider, we always often hear this, even a critique of our own city services, is that we do a lot, but not a lot of people know about it. And so when I look at the Boys and Girls Club, when you looked at John Urban last night, that talked about Project Uplift. You mentioned tonight was also Legacy Alliance, but Sierra Vista. I saw Perfecto. I don't know if Perfecto's in here, but he was here outside when I came in. But the West Modesto Community Collaborative provides mentoring services and things like that. So there's a lot of activity going on in Modesto and a lot of things, because one thing that I think we all know and was really apparent tonight is it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. Some people will be attracted to sports. Some people will be attracted to a roller rink. Some people will be attracted and find safety in computers or academics or whatever it may be. And what really kept coming back to me, and I wanted to make sure that I reiterate tonight, is it's going to take all of us. It's not going to be a city problem, 100%. The city and the Modesto Police Department are partners and need to step up, and we need to be part of the solution. The county, the state, the feds, but our private sector as well. This is a public-private partnership, and we have a lot of generous people. When you look at the Stanislaus Community Foundation, when you look at a lot of different things, there's a lot of opportunities, and it's really kind of harnessing all of those resources together, in my opinion, to really make people aware and connect our youth with some of these programs, and build on and expand some of the things that we heard last night and tonight. I know that Modesto can be a model for breaking the cycle of disparity and opportunities for our youth especially. And so Wendy, I know you've been a huge proponent of this, and we've been talking about this for a while, and I hope that these continued conversations moves us closer to making some of these things a reality. But I think what I was really impressed about tonight in the conversations that were here was really focused on solutions. It's often easy for all of us, myself included, to point out the problems. And that's oftentimes what we see in our media is just pointing out problems. Let's all commit to be part of the solution. Let's not be afraid to fail. We can't be afraid to be embarrassed because we tried something that didn't work. It didn't work, we'll try something else. But I really appreciate the conversation tonight. So that was my diatribe. I think I stayed under 3 minutes. And then I just wanted to really provide some information tonight, real quick, and then obviously answer any questions about immigration. Immigration has been a hot topic, obviously, since a new administration came into power. And I want to be very clear. We posted on our social media. I met with a group of mostly Spanish-speaking residents a few weeks ago with my assistant chief, Ivan Valencia. And I'm happy to continue the conversation here tonight because I want to be very clear on what where our interaction and what our roles are when it comes to immigration. SB 54, Senate Bill 54, is very clear on law enforcement agencies in California on our interactions with immigration officials. And to kind of simplify it as best I can, is unequivocally, we do not engage in general immigration enforcement. And what that means is immigration enforcement because of someone's status is not something that the Modesto Police Department or any agency in California will be involved in. Where the law allows us to interact and cooperate with federal immigration officials when it has to do with somebody who has a judicial warrant for some type of serious or violent crime or is wanted on some type of serious or violent crime. In those instances, when there's a safety issue to our community because of the type of crime, those are instances where we will cooperate with federal immigration officials. And really the way I like to explain that is, I don't care about somebody's immigration status. If somebody is a danger to the community or wanted on serious or violent crime, my duty is to protect our community and make sure that those people are apprehended. So that's regardless of immigration status. But those are kind of the guidelines of when we're allowed to cooperate with immigration officials. Per SB 54, we're not allowed to even ask somebody's immigration status when we come into contact with somebody, and cannot take any type of action even if we become aware of someone's immigration status, just for a violation of immigration status. And so our success in keeping our community safe is dependent on our community. We don't work in a vacuum. My belief in the way that we police our city is a community policing model. The input from our community on how they want to be policed, how we want to be kept safe, and everybody wants to be kept safe. We talked about, and I truly believe when we talk about our youth, a lot of where things go wrong is because people find safety in different places, and sometimes that's negative influences. But we want to be, everybody wants to be safe. And so we rely on our community for that. And so in being involved in general immigration where somebody is fearful to talk to us because of their immigration status is not something that we're going to be involved in. And so I want to make that very clear. We need all of our community's help, whether someone's documented or not, to help solve crimes and keep our community safe. So it's kind of a quick overview, but hopefully that differentiates between what we do and what we don't do, and when we will cooperate with federal immigration officials and when we won't. But local law enforcement in this county, and I've talked to the sheriff and I've talked to all of our police chiefs in the county, all agree on what I'm talking about tonight, that we do not engage in general immigration enforcement. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the board or the public.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any questions from the board?
Okay. Chief, you mentioned SB 64 and it's SB 64, is that what you said?
SB 54.
54, I'm sorry. And you said that prevents you from enforcing federal immigration laws, other than it involves a violent criminal or whatever. In your experience, since this new administration, federal administration, has taken office, have you seen the federal authorities in the community more prevalent than it was prior?
No, we don't really engage with federal immigration in the history of my career. We'll deal with Homeland Security, because Homeland Security, which is under ICE, has agents that are involved in like narcotics trafficking and gangs and things like that. So we've had HSI agents that have been on different task force or come into the city to work narcotics, again, not general immigration enforcement. So those are the interactions that we've mostly had with immigration enforcement. It's been very rare. I have seen over the last few months, or I'd say even the last month, I have been made aware of a few times that immigration officials have been in the city of Modesto. And so I can tell you on both the occasions that I'm thinking of, we have not assisted them in any way. We were notified that they were here, and we did not assist them in any way.
Thanks.
Chief, what's the latest ruling on being able to go into hospitals, schools, and churches?
Again, I'm speak out a little bit out of my turn, because again, I'm not a federal law enforcement agent, but I can tell you from a local perspective, again, we wouldn't be going into any of these places for any type of immigration, because we don't do immigration enforcement. But I think from what I understand, there's been some type of, at least from what I read, there's some lifting of allowing federal agents to go into those locations. I'm not aware of anywhere in Stanislaus County or anywhere where that's happening. I was just contacted by a community stakeholder the other day because there was a rumor that there was actually going to be immigration checkpoint going on somewhere in Stanislaus County. And I do not believe that occurred, and that is not something that I had been aware of or something that from what I understand is even a tactic that immigration officials are using.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I will be opening this up to the public, so if there are any public comments on this agenda topic, please step forward.
My question is, you said there's going to be checkpoints. Is there any way that you all, as police officers in Stanislaus County, can you prevent that?
And I apologize if I misspoke. So that was a rumor that a community member had actually called and talked to me and was relaying a rumor that their immigration officials were going to set up a checkpoint. I do not believe that actually occurred, and that is not something that I've heard that ICE or immigration is doing. So that's kind of the first thing. I just want to clarify in case anybody misunderstood that. That did not happen as far as I'm aware. I don't think that's anything I've been hearing that's going to go on. But to your second part of the question is no. Federal law enforcement has their own jurisdiction and their own sets of authority. I have zero control over what federal law enforcement or federal immigration does in our own community. Sorry, go ahead.
My family, I'm married to a Hispanic family. I mean, a husband who's Hispanic, and they're scared. They have their papers, and they're hearing rumors that they're picking up anybody. Like the interpretation when President Trump said that criminals. So we interpret it as if you're illegal, you're a criminal, right? You're breaking the law. So, but my family have their papers, my husband, but they're still scared because they're thinking they're going to pick up, random people and take them back to Mexico, and it's not so, it's not easy to get back from that. So how do we ease the fear or, from that? Because the whole family's scared.
Yeah, and I wish I had a good answer for that. What I want people to understand is at least at a local law enforcement level, I do not want our community, whether they're documented or not, to feel afraid to interact with us, whether it be on a traffic stop, whether it be because they're reporting a crime. We want cooperation. We don't want somebody to be fearful to report a crime for fear that we would find out they were undocumented and then something would happen to them. I want to ease the fear, at least that fear, that we will not contact immigration officials. We will not take any action detrimental to a community member who's undocumented because they reported a crime or because they were on a traffic stop and we found that they were undocumented. That does not happen at the local level. As far as federal immigration goes, I understand the fear that I've talked to many community members and have expressed the exact same fear that you just mentioned. And again, I feel for those community members, and that's why I think it's important for us to very clearly clarify what our role is so that hopefully those in our community aren't fearful of our local law enforcement.
Sorry, I just wanted to take a moment to say it is a school night. I got a kid with math homework. I was hoping to stick around, but I have to get on home. So I thank you for the invitation. Welcome to come back to explore this this conversation another day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with math, man.
Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name's Jasmine, and I have a few questions. One's a little more legal, but I'll start with the one that kind of branches off of the speaker before me. So as police officers, I know protecting and serving your community is something that I like to refer to when looking at police actions, and I really appreciate that it's clear the perspective of community members is all community members, regardless of immigration status, because we're really all here together. I guess my question kind of is maybe also clarifying what the person said before me. If obviously there's a lot of limitations between the interactions between immigration and police officers, but I think there is still more to protect and serve these community members, some that are undocumented. I think that we can do more as a community and as police officers. If you are going to become aware of something like a checkpoint or like a raid, is that something you're willing to share with the community, or that if you're able to? Or is there a way that you can spread more information amongst all of this disinformation that's very harmful to the community? I know a lot of people that have a hard time still participating in the community because they are so fearful. And remembering the last time there was mass deportations in our history, a lot of citizens were deported. And so it's a very valid fear, and there's generational and personal trauma that people have. And so it's not something that we can really dismiss, and it'd be nice to know that the police were here to protect and serve us as community members. Also, we have these red cards called Know Your Rights cards that are going around our community. And I wanted to know, from a legal standpoint, what some perspectives might be on these cards, if they're aware. People have been instructed to hand these to immigration or even police officers if they're confronted with them. So it says, don't open the door if an immigration agent is knocking on the door. Do not answer any questions from an immigration agent if they try to talk to you. You have the right to remain silent. Do not say anything without first speaking to a lawyer. You have the right to speak with a lawyer. If you are outside of your home, ask the agent if you are free to leave, and if they say yes, leave calmly. Give this card to the agent. If you are inside your home, show the card through the window or slide it under the door. And then this is what, those are kind of the instructions for the person, and this is what it says. I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, or sign or hand you any documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights. And it talks about the Fourth Amendment right to not have search and seizure, yeah, if there's any agents that might be acting outside of the law, are the police able to support us as community members?
Thank you.
I will try to remember all of those questions, so if I forget one, please just shout it out. I think the first one that comes to mind, trying to take it in order, is if we will notify the community of any federal law enforcement actions ahead of time, and the answer is no. Federal law enforcement or immigration officials specifically, that's what we're talking about, again, have their own operations. We may be notified at some level of what they're doing, but typically we're not involved in the specifics of what it is unless they request specific help. If they requested specific help, it would run very high up our chain of command, where we would have to know exactly every detail of who they're looking for and things like that before we would ever get involved. So generally, if they were to just say they were in an area, they don't need our assistance, I don't know what they're looking for, and we're not going to interfere in any type of other law enforcement agency's investigation. And so So the question, I think, is we become aware of some type of immigration action in the city of Modesto ahead of time, would we put out something to notify people of that? And the answer would be no. The second part, which I'm going to skip to the end, I know there's a few questions there in the middle, so you have to remind me of those. I'm not in a position where I'm prepared to give any legal advice on the card that you talked about. But I would say that I think people should seek legal advice on what their rights are. People do have the right to remain silent in our country and do not have to talk to the police department, or any law enforcement officials, whether you're documented or not. But when it comes down to kind of nuances of things, like if a police officer pulls somebody over, again, this is general, right? I'm not differentiating here between somebody who's documented and not documented. If we're going to give you a ticket, you're required to sign the ticket. If you refuse to sign the ticket, then the law requires that I take you before a magistrate, which means I take you to jail. And so having someone say, do not sign any documents, I guess that's a decision that person has to make, because typically what we do is we give someone a citation, they have to appear in court later, and they leave. So that's where you have to be very careful about what advice you're giving people, because a lot of it is very situation dependent. I've seen some cards before, I don't think it's on that specific one necessarily, that talked about if someone comes to your door with a warrant, don't let them in, or make them slide it underneath the door, type of thing. There's legal standards on what law enforcement officers have to do before they can force a door open, and one of those requirements isn't that they have to provide a copy of the warrant. Depending on the safety of the officers and things like that, they have the legal authority to come in and secure a scene before they provide the warrant. So what I would say to some of that is, before you just take a card on face value from anybody and use that as legal advice, I would talk to somebody in the legal profession to make sure that everything that's on there is accurate, if that makes sense. But as far as in general, people are not required to talk to the police. They have to make that decision on whether it's their benefit or not. Because as we do when we read people their rights, anything they say can or will be used against them in court, potentially, right? So I know you had a couple other questions in there. Do you mind saying those?
Yeah, so if, like we said, there's still constitutional rights everyone has.
Sure.
And if immigration is acting outside of those laws, who can we call? Are the police able to regulate them at all? Like, if they break the law, are they invincible?
So at every level of the government, whether it's local or municipal, we have a complaint process. Obviously, people go through, if they're not happy with that, there's civil action that people can take, lawsuits and things like that. And that's the same at the federal level. They have a complaint process, an investigator process they can go through as well. And then obviously there's, people can file lawsuits in both state and federal court as well. So there are accountability measures that people can take for even federal law enforcement should they believe that they're acting out of the scope of the law. I'm sorry, was there any more? I wanted to answer all your questions.
No, that was
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question. Chief,
I think they want you to come. Up here.
If you have a public comment, please just stand forward.
I just want to make understand. So, in case whatever you take any undocumented people for a little minor, but not harm, no, like just something like that. So, do they have to sign if you take it, for example, if you take someone for 3 days, for example, to jail, but they didn't do something harm or like that, do you make them sign and they're going to be, take them out to Mexico, something like that?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but if I understand what you're saying, if we get somebody on a minor violation and they go to jail, it is not dependent on local law enforcement or police department at all. Once we take that person to jail and they're in the custody of the sheriff's office, that would be incumbent upon them and their guidelines for notifying ICE, depending on the crime, to have ICE come pick them up. So that's probably something more appropriate for the sheriff's office because we don't have a custody facility. And that we don't transfer people from any type of custodial jail situation to immigration officials.
So the real, you will take to iron, take them from there?
We just enforce local state law and municipal codes of the city of Modesto. And if we were to book somebody in jail, it would be book them on jail now. We would not place any type of immigration detainer because we found they were undocumented or something like that on them for any type of minor violation.
You know how you give them like 3 days probation or something like that, like, for example, drinking, driving, so that's the next like, they're in the, whatever.
I think as far as whether a DUI or whether any type of specific crime would precipitate immigration officials to come pick somebody up from jail is a question for them. I couldn't answer that question.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments related to this agenda item? Please step forward and you will have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Thank you. When going over use of force statistics previously, I believe Chief stated, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but that use of force came about oftentimes from flight, which comes about from fear. So if fear leads to flight, and flight leads to use of force, potentially even abuse of force, I guess my question, and maybe this would be a follow-up presentation, maybe it'd be something the Chief answers tonight, it's not my purview, but I want to know, what is MPD doing to build trust with our migrant community? Because right now I feel that trust is lacking, and there's certainly a lot of room for improvement there, because we've got a lot of folks that are really afraid to interact with the police, especially because of immigration status. They don't know the law that the Chief has helpfully pointed out tonight. But I think out of fear of cooperation between MPD and federal immigration authorities, that doesn't really happen. People are really scared in their own communities, and they shouldn't have to be. So my question is, what is MPD doing to build trust with our migrant community members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the question. So really what we're doing is participating in any community events that we're invited to, like I talked about previously. We just met in South Modesto a couple weeks ago with mostly Spanish-speaking group of residents who had the same fear of what was going to happen to them and their families. We have posted on social media, knowing that not everybody accesses our Facebook account or things like that. Meetings like this, we were talking about, we were actually going to put this immigration topic later in the year, but because of the timeliness of it, we felt it was important to have it tonight, why we kind of fit it in with Judge Villalobos. So those are the things that we're doing. Part of Project Resolve, which is a community member and law enforcement group that meets quarterly. We just met recently and had a very similar conversation. And so what we're trying to do in even forums like this is to reach people in the community that are stakeholders or representatives of other groups that can help spread our message. We know that it goes back to we can't do this alone. We can get the message out there, understanding that people are going to be still fearful, and I know many of you represent stakeholder groups, and so I asked for your help in making sure that you spread what we're talking about tonight and the role of local law enforcement, SB 54 in California, to make sure that we can do our best to make sure that our migrant community and undocumented community is not fearful of local law enforcement as much as we can. So those are the things that we're doing. Always open to suggestions or other community meetings that people would invite us to where we can spread that message as well.
Thank you.
Hello again. Two things. One, to try to add a little clarification to the red cards. And I'm not a lawyer, disclaimer. I have a law degree, but I'm not a lawyer, and if you want to know the difference, it's a little thing called the bar exam. But the thing about not signing something, because that's a very good point about not signing a ticket, that might get you into worse trouble, but the not signing thing, I know is specifically if an ICE agent is asking you to sign something. So it's a pretty important difference. You might want to mention to people, I haven't actually looked at those red cards in a while, so I forget like exactly what they say. But, yeah, the best advice is to not talk about your immigration status to anyone except your attorney that you're talking to. And the thing about not signing, because you can sign away certain rights if you are undocumented. And so that's why I know that's on there. It's specifically if an ICE agent, I don't think there would be any situation where an officer would try to get somebody to sign one of those papers. It's like that you don't have the right to an attorney. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but if an immigration officer asks you to sign something, you could be signing away a right like that. That was the first thing. Number two, I know that the ACLU of Northern California actually years ago, maybe under the first Trump administration, did a report about after the Truth Act passed to see if law enforcement was still working with ICE in one way or another, even like maybe they not even knowing that they weren't supposed to do something, maybe the law is just unclear and there's gray areas. And I do know that our sheriff department was specifically mentioned in that report. It was a gray area where ICE basically called and, they're not supposed to say, hey, can you hold Joe for us until we get there to pick him up, we know he's getting out of jail. They're not supposed to coordinate that far to say, okay, yeah, we're gonna keep him longer than we would have because we're waiting for immigration to get here. But the incident and they, public rescue request got emails from the sheriff's department and it did say, it's like, hey, what time are you releasing prisoners today? How long would it take me to get there from Stockton? And the staff from the sheriff's office said, oh, it takes, about 45 minutes if it's traffic, da-da-da. We usually let people go after 3. So it was, I don't think they got in any trouble over that because it is kind of this gray area. Maybe didn't reach this, threshold of like coordinating with ICE. But, I would ask, like, is it Modesto Police Department policy to refer that type of email to a superior, to not answer it at all? If it's just general information, is there any more clarification you can give on policy?
Thank you.
That's a good question, Tom, and I hadn't thought about that, but I guess if there was general information about how long it took to get to Modesto or general things like that, I don't, number one, I think most, especially in the current environment, any emails that we got from ICE requesting information would rise up to a command staff level, and I'd be aware of it, and we would talk about what our response would be. That would be my expectation. But in general, if they asked how long it took to get to Modesto, or general information that wasn't divulging any type of immigration statuses or specific information about people, I'd have to think about that more. But again, I don't want to. The intent of SB 54 is to make sure that we understand that all of our community members are important, and that we want to make sure that people are safe, to help keep our community safe, to report crimes. And so I wouldn't want to do anything that I thought would undermine that credibility as best I could. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? We have one.
Okay, so as I was taking notes, one of the kind of first questions I had, and I think it may have been answered, but I just want to make sure there's clarification on it, because I was going to ask, are there areas here that serve as sanctuary sites? And I think Chief, you had mentioned that there may be now ICE is able to kind of lift the safety of those sanctuary sites, and I wanted to ask, is that clear? Is that's what they can do? Are they actually able to enter sanctuary sites? And if that's the case, is the local police able to enforce sanctuary sites to continue to be safe spaces? that's kind of, I just wanted to ask that clarifying question to make sure, because I think that should definitely be a thing that the public should be aware of, you know, because we do have folks not going to work out of fear. We have a lot of kids absent in schools right now, a significant amount due to that fear. So if we can kind of get clarification on that, that would be great. Thank you.
So, again, and a little bit, and I feel like Ruben a little bit, he did a much better job of punting, as he called it, different questions. So I will put a disclaimer that I am not an expert on federal law, because that is not what we deal with. I kind of get my information from multiple sources like you guys do, and from what I understand, but don't quote me on this, is that the current administration has allowed immigration officials latitude to go into some of those otherwise places they didn't used to go. So take that for what it's worth, but do your own research to verify whether that's accurate or not. But secondly, I think the question is, we do not have any control or authority over federal law enforcement. So if they were to go into any of the places you mentioned, we would not have jurisdiction or authority to stop them from carrying out whatever federal law enforcement duties that they were doing. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions from the public or comments? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the board that would like to make a comment on this agenda topic item? Seeing none, we will be moving forward onto staff comments and reports. We have a quick report from the independent police auditor update from Stephen OIR.
Good evening, Chair Solorio and members of the board. I heard you say a quick update, so I'm going to take my cues from the chair here. But I hope you will indulge me for a minute. I want to just tell you a couple things that you already know in light of the fact that we're in a different venue tonight and pleased to be here. Like the chief and Lieutenant Kleiber and some of the members of the board, this is actually my second consecutive night at this facility, thanks to the event that was hosted by the NAACP, and thank you, Board Member Bird, for putting that together and for inviting me to be a part of it. I just want to speak very briefly about what the role is of the independent police auditor in the aftermath of the Forward Together process that all of you folks are very familiar with. Oversight. New levels of oversight and engagement with the police department was a big initiative of a big recommendation of that group, big outcome from that process. And there were two prongs that the city ended up choosing. One of them, of course, is your board, which has the resident level engagement and your public meetings and efforts at learning and serving as a liaison and making recommendations based on your experience as residents here is obviously a key part of that initiative. The other piece of it was to add an outside monitoring or auditing of internal police processes for the first time. And that is where I come in. I work with an outfit called OIR Group, and we are not law enforcement. We work on behalf of the city, but we're actually independent of the city. And we do this kind of work in a number of different jurisdictions. And basically, through our relationship with the city and the contract that we have access to otherwise confidential internal department materials, investigation files or records in areas of important public concern, including the citizen complaint process, the internal affairs process for investigations of officer misconduct, use of force review process, critical incident review process. There are a lot of protections and confidentiality rules that restrict access to those materials, but through the again, recommendations of the Forward Together group and the will of the City Council, and I'm happy to say the cooperation of the police department, I have had about a year and a half of working with the city and providing oversight of the police department in terms of evaluating some of those processes and trying to make sure that they have legitimacy and credibility and effectiveness based on the experience of myself and my colleagues. So very happy to be here tonight. It was a lot of positive energy in the room and the concerns that were raised and addressed, and I think tonight has been a very good follow-up to that. That's all very valuable information for me to have as a non-resident of Modesto, but somebody who's certainly very interested in the city and the operations of the city, and I think police-community relations is a key component of that, and certainly a lens through which I try to make my work as effective as possible. So, here's the quick part. Again, along with my opportunity to be here last night, I just wanted to let you know that the annual audit process is well underway. I actually sat with Lieutenant Kleider for a couple hours to go over a number of questions that have come up in my initial review of the case materials that the department has provided for me. And I am still on track to issue a public report and present that to your board in April of this year. So I will look forward to seeing you again in person at that time. And thank you very much. And of course, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Stephen, I think at our last meeting, we had a brief discussion about the use of force statistics and how to best analyze those. And if memory serves, you said one of the agencies that your firm contracts with was Palo Alto, and that they had hired an outside agency to evaluate their statistical data and offer them opinions about what it meant and what they might, what strategies they might employ relative to that information. Have you had an opportunity to do that, and if so, what was the outcome of that?
So thank you for the question, and to be more specific, it was actually RIPA data, the Racial Identity and Profiling Act data that police agencies are responsible for providing to the state. Palo Alto is one of the cities that we work with, and as you mentioned, they well over a year ago, based on the initial numbers that they had accumulated, they actually hired a team of academics from the Midwest to do a qualitative analysis of the statistics and see what insights they could provide. That I am able to provide you at least with an update as far as timing. I will be in Palo Alto in April when we're making our next presentation to the City Council there, and I think that same night will be when that information is shared publicly. So it will take a while, but I promise I haven't forgotten you, and I will get back to you with any insights that come out of that process.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the board that has a comment? Thanks. Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
I just want to thank you, Stephen, for coming last night.
My pleasure, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so I will be opening it up to the public. If there's anyone from the public that has a comment on this agenda item, please step forward. Okay, seeing none, I will be closing the public comments.
I have that effect on audiences. Thank you very much.
All right, and just bring it right back to the board. Are there any other?
What is the comment on this, he's an independent auditor?
Yeah, he's an independent police auditor.
Let me see this, yeah.
Okay, I'll reopen public comments. Sebastian?
Yeah, for many years. I asked him, for many years I asked him from police chief, why don't police officers be drug tested? In a situation like what they done to me, I thought the guy was on drugs to beat my window out, my rear mirror. He was hyped up on something. So, is there a problem having, when there's a situation going on, whether it's a shooting or they're beating the hell out of somebody, is it a problem? Is that they can be drug tested? Do we need to try to, because when I drove buses for Greyhound, I was here 6 months to see drug testers.
Sorry to interrupt.
I may be on the wrong subject.
Yes.
Well, at least I got it out there.
Thank you, Special. Alrighty, seeing that there are no further comments from the board, we'll be moving on to any board comments and reports. So at this time, if there are any updates on policy goal number 8, review the use of force policy to minimize likelihood of death resulting from the use of force.
Nothing to report, but however, we did have an amazing event yesterday. I can honestly say there was a good amount of people there. I think it was like 60, 70 people in the building last night. Very good turnout, and we were able to kind of talk some of these things through as far as like what we can do as a community and what we could look forward to as far as working with the police department and working together. So I think when it came to the use of force event last night, I think it was really, really good, and the discussion was even better. But nothing to report from our group.
Thank you, Austin. Policy goal number 1, improve relations between the community and the department.
She didn't grab a mic, so I'll do it. I am very sorry I missed last night's session here. I was at the town hall around the traffic. That's more of my day job responsibility, so I had to be there, but I knew we were well represented, so looking forward to hearing some more about that. We had our first meeting. My subcommittee has kind of taken on, through some of the encouragement from board member Austin Grant, the concept around a Know Your Rights event that we've started meeting. We had a good initial concept conversation yesterday, not something we're looking to have pulled together until fall, with the plan to take our time to really vet the process, the insight, the information, the stakeholders, so that we bring a nice, well-rounded event to our community. That's all I have.
Thank you. And policy goal number 3, reduce youth arrest, particularly among Latino youth.
Judge Villalobos was our committee's response. We invited him to present to everybody, and so we thank him again for coming, and that was our report.
Thank you, Wendy. And now we'll be moving on to future agenda items. Next month, is it next month that these will be happening? Okay, so next month we will be having our agenda items as community engagement and activities presentation by Lieutenant Ryan Clyburn, and then an update on officers at school programs as well by Lieutenant Ryan Clyburn. And that's it, our meeting is adjourned. The next meeting, okay, our next meeting will be March 19th. It's the 3rd Wednesday of next month, and it will be back at the Chambers, correct? Back at the Chambers on 10th Street. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of your night.